You are lying still, and that is enough. Your body is soft against whatever holds you, and the weight of the day is already beginning to lift, rising away from you like warm air from sunlit stone. You breathe in slowly, and you breathe out slowly, and with each slow breath, you feel yourself settling a little deeper. Your shoulders are heavy. Your hands are easy. The space behind your eyes is growing dim and quiet. The way a room goes gentle when someone turns the lamp down low. There is nowhere you need to be. There is nothing you need to remember. You are simply here, breathing, drifting, and the world is soft around you. Let your eyes close all the way now. Let your jaw go loose. Let your thoughts move slowly, like water over smooth and ancient rock, and follow the sound of this voice somewhere far and calm and wonderfully old. You are standing at the edge of a narrow opening in the earth. The desert behind you is wide and full of sun. The sky a deep and certain blue. The air warm with the particular warmth of a place that has known thousands of years of afternoon. But just ahead, the rock walls rise, and they rise, and they lean together overhead until the sky becomes a pale thread, a whisper of light between two walls of sandstone, and you feel the temperature change before you even take a step forward. The cool comes to you like a gift, like a slow exhale from the stone itself, and you breathe it in, and it tastes of shade and ancient quiet. This is the sick. The word means a shaft, a corridor cut by water and by time, and you step into it gently. The path beneath your feet is smooth from the passing of centuries. Caravans walked here, merchants carrying spice and silk and incense from the ports of Arabia. Their camels patient, their voices low, their lamps swaying in the narrow dark. Long before them, Nabatean hands shaped channels into the rock walls to carry water down into the city beyond. And you can still trace those shallow grooves with your eyes as you walk. They are worn now, blurred at the edges, softened by water and wind, and the slow, unhurried passage of time. The walls on either side of you are extraordinary. They are made of sandstone, which is itself a kind of layered history, red and amber, and the palest cream, banded in long horizontal strokes, as though some patient hand painted them in slow, broad movements, while the world was still deciding what it wanted to be. The colors shift as you move. A band of deep rose becomes a stripe of violet, becomes a wash of ochre, becomes a cool and dusty rose again, and all of it glows faintly in the dim, filtered light. The way the inside of a shell glows when you hold it up and let the sun come through. You move deeper in. The path curves, and the walls curve with it, and and the sky above narrows further still. In some places, the two walls nearly meet, and you walk through a ribbon of blue-gray shadow, and the air is cool and still, and the only sounds are your own soft footsteps and a faint and distant wind that finds its way down from the open desert above. The sick is a little more than a kilometer long, and it winds, which is part of its particular beauty, because around every gentle bend there is some new variation of light and stone and color, and you never quite see what is coming next, not until you are already there. There are small carvings in the walls, niches cut into the red rock where figures once stood, divine figures to the Nabateans, guardians of the passage, watching over travelers moving through. They are mostly worn smooth now, their features softened to suggestion, but you can still feel the intention in them, the care that went into setting them there, the sense that this corridor was never just a road, but a kind of ceremony, a slow transition from the ordinary world into something set apart. You do not hurry. There is no reason to hurry. The city of Petra has waited 2,000 years, and it will wait a little longer. And so you walk slowly, trailing your fingertips along the cool stone if you like, feeling its texture under your touch, feeling the deep mineral patience of it, the way it has no memory of urgency, no knowledge of hurry, no sense at all of anything but the long, slow turning of seasons and light. The colors deepen as you go. The walls lean close and then open back slightly, and there are pockets of reflected light where the sandstone catches the brightness from above and throws it back in rose and gold. And you pass through these pockets the way you might pass through a pool of warmth on a cool morning. And they are brief and beautiful and utterly without effort. Somewhere further along, a thin channel of water once ran beside the path, brought from a spring some distance away by those same Nabatean engineers who understood this desert with an intimacy that is almost impossible to imagine. The channel is dry now, but the faint depression in the rock remains, and you walk beside it as though walking beside a very quiet and very old river, one that has simply decided to rest for a little while. The sound of the wind above is softer now. The walls have taken it and smoothed it, the way stone smooths everything it receives, slowly and without complaint. The air in the sick is its own air, cool and still and faintly mineral, carrying the smell of ancient rock and the memory of water. And you breathe it in deeply, and it fills your lungs with something that feels very much like calm. You are not yet at the end. The path still winds ahead, still curves through its long and patient corridor, still offers another bend and another, each one holding its small revelation of color and shade and carved stone. But you are in no rush to arrive. The arriving will come when it comes. For now, you are simply inside the sick, inside the cool and winding quiet, inside the deep rose walls with their painted bands of amber and cream and shadow, walking slowly, breathing slowly, belonging for this moment entirely to the ancient and unhurried stone. The walls hold you gently, the cool air settles around you. Your breath slows and slows, and the path curves once more ahead, and you follow it softly, and the light is dim and beautiful, and you are perfectly, completely at rest. The canyon begins to loosen its hold around you. The walls, which have cradled you for so long in their cool and shadowed quiet, start to pull apart slowly, like cupped hands gently opening. You sense the change before you can name it. A warmth returns to the air. A softness enters the light. Something ahead is breathing a color you have not yet seen today. You take one more step, and then another, and the world widens just slightly at its seam. A pale column appears at the far edge of your vision, catching the last of the afternoon sun. It glows the way embers glow, not with heat exactly, but with a kind of stored warmth, a warmth the stone has been holding since morning. You do not rush toward it. Your feet carry you at their own unhurried pace, each footfall soft on the dusty sandstone ground, and the column grows a little taller, a little more certain of itself with every step. Then a second column appears beside the first, and between them, a shadow so deep it seems to hum. The canyon exhales around you, widening fully now, and the treasury steps into view all at once, enormous and impossibly still, carved directly into the face of the rose cliff, as if it had always been there waiting, patient as the mountain itself. You stop without deciding to stop. Your eyes move slowly upward, following the columns from their wide bases to their carved capitals, where the stone has been shaped into curling leaves and gentle scrolls, each one softened by 2,000 years of wind and silence. Above the columns, a triangular pediment rests in perfect ease, and above that, a great rounded tholos rises against the cliff, its urn-shaped crown catching the fading gold and holding it a moment longer than the stone below. The whole facade is the color of a pressed rose petal, that dusty, blushing shade of pink that sits somewhere between terracotta and coral, between warmth and stillness. In this light, in this particular hour when the sun tips toward the western hills, the color deepens. The shadows filling the carved recesses turn a soft violet, and against that violet, the lit surfaces seem almost to give off their own glow. You watch the light move slowly, barely perceptibly, the way light always moves when you are calm enough to notice. There are niches carved into the upper reaches of the facade, and within two of them stand figures worn smooth by centuries of wind-carried sand. You cannot make out their faces anymore. They have become suggestions, presences, gentle shapes that ask nothing of you. They are simply part of the stone now, returned slowly to the mountain from which they were drawn. And there is something restful in that, something that settles in your chest like a stone sinking through still water. Below the columns, the great doorway opens into darkness. You do not need to know what lies inside. The interior is cool. You sense that without entering. It draws the eye gently inward and then lets it rest at the threshold. The darkness, there is not the darkness of something hidden, but the darkness of something at peace. A room that has been quiet for a very long time and is in no hurry to be otherwise. The courtyard before the treasury has been worn smooth by an uncountable number of feet across an uncountable number of years. Nabatean merchants crossed it carrying spices from Arabia, frankincense, and myrrh wrapped in cloth, their sandals scuffing this same ground. Roman travelers paused here, looking upward just as you are looking upward now. The stone remembers all of them in the way stone remembers things, not with language, but with texture, with a certain polished patience in its surface. You feel that continuity beneath your own souls, that long, long thread of human presence stretching softly back through time. A few small birds move near the base of the cliff to your left, darting between crevices in the sandstone, disappearing and reappearing with a lightness that makes the vast facade seem even more still by contrast. A scatter of dry desert flowers, tiny and pale, grows from a crack where the cliff meets the ground. They have found enough moisture there to open, just barely, their petals nearly translucent in the low light. You notice them the way you notice small things when your mind has grown quiet, with a kind of fond, unhurried attention. The sky above Petra has been shifting all this while. The blue of midday has given way to something thinner, more luminous, a color with no exact name, but one that feels familiar to the body. The way the sky looks when the day is gently concluding. A wash of amber lingers at the edges, and where it meets the blush of the stone, it creates a warmth so entire, so enveloping, that the whole valley seems wrapped in it. You let your gaze drift from the treasury across the wider landscape. Beyond the courtyard, carved tombs line the surrounding cliffs, their facades darkening now as the direct light retreats. They look like closed eyes, those doorways, peaceful and undemanding. The city that once moved and breathed here, the city of water channels and temple gardens and fragrant trade routes, has long since grown quiet. What remains is this, the carved testimony of people who understood stone as a dwelling place, who understood that what is shaped from the earth will outlast nearly everything else. The air has cooled another degree or two. You feel it on your forearms, a gentle reminder that evening is settling over the plateau, over the sandstone valleys, over the carved and patient facades. A single lamp, somewhere farther into the ruins, catches the dusk and adds a small golden point to all that surrounding softness. It flickers once, twice, then steadies. You turn back to the treasury one last time. The rose color has deepened into something closer to amber now, a warm, burnished tone that holds the last of the day with unhurried grace. The columns cast long shadows across the courtyard floor, and those shadows are the softest shade of lavender. Everything here is color and quiet, warmth slowly releasing itself into the cooling evening. The great carved stone is simply present, as it has been present for so long, neither asking nor withholding, at rest in the desert mountain, as you, in your own way, are beginning to rest now too. The light dims another shade. The valley holds you gently. There is nowhere else to be. The merchants who once walked these same stones carried their lives in the weight of packed leather and rope-bound cedar. They came from the south and the east, from ports smelling of salt and distant timber, and they brought with them the slow patience of people who had learned to read the desert the way others read rivers. You can imagine them now, moving through the wide colonnaded street at the heart of Petra, their sandals quiet on the flat paving, their voices low and steady as they called to one another across open stalls. The Nabateans were extraordinary traders, and their city showed it in every carved surface and every poured cistern. They controlled the routes that connected Arabia to the Mediterranean, and frankincense passed through their hands the way water passes through cupped palms, briefly held, always moving. You rest in the thought of those caravans, the long, slow lines of camels descending toward the valley, bells chiming softly against their necks, the smell of myrrh and black pepper rising into the cool morning air. The merchants had stalls and warehouses tucked along the colonnaded street, fabric from Egypt, folded in careful stacks, amphorae of wine from the Aegean sealed with thick clay stoppers. There were small glass bottles from the Phoenician coast, catching the pale light and scattering it in thin rainbows across the dusty ground. There were ingots of copper, rolls of silk so fine they could be drawn through a ring, sacks of dried fruit, bundles of cinnamon bark, still breathing their warm spice into the afternoon air. You moved gently through this imagined scene, past the merchant stalls, past the low murmur of men counting coin and women haggling in Aramaic, past the scribes who sat cross-legged in the shade and pressed words into soft clay with the sure, unhurried strokes of people who trusted that the record mattered. Each transaction was careful, each measure weighed twice. There was a slowness to commerce here that modern life has mostly forgotten, a deliberateness that moved at the pace of the camel, of the turning season, of sand shifting one grain at a time. Above the street, cut into the rosy cliff faces on both sides, were the tombs of the wealthy, their facades carved with eagles and urns, and the classical columns that the Nabateans borrowed from Rome and made entirely their own. But the living were here too, in the space below, in the colonnaded porticos, where shaded walkways kept the midday heat at a gentle distance. Children ran between the columns, bare feet on warm stone, laughing in the way children laugh in every century, high and bright, and quickly gone around a corner. The Nabatean world was quieter than you might expect. They were not conquerors in the way Rome was, not empire builders in the way of Assyria or Persia before them. They built their power in the smaller, more patient work of knowing the routes, of digging wells in impossible places, of filling cisterns cut into sandstone walls with every winter rain, so that the summer, dry and relentless, would not undo them. Water was their deepest craft. They moved it through pipes carved into rock, gathered it in pools lined with plaster, so fine it held the liquid as cleanly as clay holds a fingerprint. Some of the merchants lived in chambers carved directly into the cliff, smoothing the inner walls with plaster and painting them in the muted ochres and reds they found in the earth around them. A merchant's home might have a single oil lamp burning at night, a small flame that made the painted walls glow like the inside of a warm hand. The carved ceiling above would have been low enough to reach, close enough to feel the cool of the stone, and the family would have slept in that safe, enclosed darkness, while the wind moved over the plateau above and left the valley floor perfectly still. You can almost hear it now, that faint sound of water trickling somewhere deep in the rock. A sound the merchants would have heard every morning when the city was waking slowly. The cook fire smoke rising in pale threads, and the air still carrying the coolness of night. The wells and channels beneath these streets still exist in places, remnants of that extraordinary care, that love of water that only people who have known its absence can feel fully. The Nabatean religion was gentle in its outward expression. Their gods were worshipped on high places, on altar platforms cut at the tops of ridges, open to the sky. There were no fearsome idols, no great temples crowded with burning sacrifice. Their most sacred object was often just a standing block of uncarved stone, receiving the light, marking the presence of the divine in the plainest possible form. In the evening, incense would drift from the high places, thin and sweet, curling out over the valley and dissolving into the air above the colonnaded street below. You feel the evening settling now over the ancient city. The merchants are counting what remains in their stalls, wrapping their measures in cloth, sealing their jars for the night. The camels outside the walls have been hobbled and fed, and they breathe slowly in the dusk, their long eyelashes blinking at the cooling air. A merchant sits at the entrance to his storeroom, shoulders relaxed, letting the warmth of the stone wall seep into his back. He has traveled a long way to be here. He will rest tonight, and tomorrow the road will open again. The carved facades around him hold the last of the light, their shadows deepening from pink to amber to a soft and dusky rose that has no precise name. The hewn doorways lead into rooms that are quiet now, rooms where once there was laughter and the smell of bread, rooms where the children were sung to sleep in Aramaic, the consonants soft and rhythmic, the melody passed from mother to child, across generations that have long since dissolved back into the sand. You let yourself settle into that long, unbroken quiet. Centuries have come and gone above this valley. Petra was Roman, then Byzantine, then Crusader, then Ottoman, and then it was forgotten for a long time, known only to the Bedouin who built their fires in the great carved chambers and stored their grain in the ancient tombs. And through all of it, the stone remained patient and rose-colored, holding the shape of the hands that carved it, holding the memory of frankincense and camel bells, and the soft press of sandal leather on a morning street, where the merchants once moved with their whole lives balanced in the careful, unhurried art of the journey. The city breathes now in the last of the evening light, slow and immense and deeply still, and you rest inside that stillness without effort, carried gently in the warmth of all that ancient, ordinary care. The path narrows here, and then opens once more, wider than it seemed from a distance. Hundreds of small candles line the sandy ground on either side, each one nestled inside a folded paper bag weighted with pale sand. Their light is warm and low, amber and unhurried, asking nothing of your eyes. You walk slowly between them, and the flames barely flicker. The air holds perfectly still. The desert has grown gentle around you, wrapping the whole valley in a silence that feels almost woven. The sand beneath your feet is fine and cool now that full evening has settled across the plateau. Each step lands almost without sound. The grains shift only slightly beneath your weight, soft and willing, and your footprints form behind you, then blur slowly at the edges, absorbed back into the ground, as though the path knows how to keep its own secrets. Ahead, a long colonnade of temple facades rises from the ancient cliff. They are immense and perfectly still. Their columns were carved directly into the living rock, and their pediments bear the shapes of urns, eagles, and figures, whose names no one living remembers. The candlelight reaches the lower carvings and rests there, warm against the cool sandstone. Above that, the cliff face retreats into a soft, violet shadow that deepens slowly toward the sky. You pass one doorway and then another. Each opening is rectangular and dark, a square of deep shadow set into the carved facade. No sound comes from inside. The chambers beyond have been empty for centuries, yet they feel at rest. They feel like rooms that have simply grown accustomed to their own quiet, rooms that hold the memory of incense and lamplight without needing to perform it. The candles continue stretching forward along the path, one after another in a long, low procession. There are so many of them that the sandy ground seems to glow from beneath, as though the light rises up through the earth itself. Your own shadow moves gently beside you, long and faint, barely distinguishable from the surrounding dark. The cliff walls on either side hold faint warmth from the day's sun, stored deep in the rock, and now releasing slowly, the way warmth always releases from things that have absorbed it over a long time. You sense it as you pass, not as heat exactly, but as something comforting, a gentleness in the air that presses lightly against your arms and shoulders, somewhere far behind you, where the valley opens toward the main street. The old Nabatean city rests under its own weight of stars. The carved tombs face west, where the light goes each evening. The merchants and pilgrims who once moved through these corridors understood time differently. They measured days by the angle of light falling across carved lintels. They measured seasons by the way certain shadows crept along certain walls. Here, in this place, time was never rushed. It was read, the way you might read something written in a language you love. And now you are reading it too. You move through the candlelit passage, and each facade you pass offers its face to you, serene and unhurried, carved perhaps 2,000 years ago by hands that took great care. The hammers and chisels that shaped these columns are long gone, but the shapes remain precise and calm, holding their form against every wind that has moved through this canyon since. The sand path curves gently here, following the natural contour of the cliff. You lean into the curve without thinking, your body trusting the path completely. The candles on the outer edge of the curve are set a little farther apart, and in the gaps between them, the sandy ground is dark and smooth. The evening air carries the faint scent of cool rock and something mineral and clean, the smell of a place that has existed far longer than any name given to it. One facade is larger than the rest. Its columns are broader, its carved frieze more elaborate, though the details are softened now by centuries of wind and occasional rain. Above the doorway, two figures face each other in profile. They are still, as all carved things are still, yet there is something companionable about the way they stand. Two people, forever side by side, watching the path together from a great height, untroubled by the passing of ages. You pause beneath them without quite meaning to. The candlelight at your feet trembles once, then steadies. The figures above you are the same as ever. You feel the rock's gathered weight above you, and it is not a heavy feeling. It is the feeling of shelter, of something solid and enduring held over your head while the stars come out in the thin violet sky. You walk on, unhurried. The path ahead is still lined with its quiet flames, each one burning with a steadiness that the still air permits and the stone seems to welcome. The facades continue on both sides, their carvings varying in style and scale, some simple and direct, others layered with ornament. Every one of them was made to face the living world. Every one of them still does, patiently, without expectation. The sound of your own footsteps on the sand is very soft. It is little more than a whisper, a slight friction, a soft agreement between your feet and the ground. You notice it, and then it becomes part of the larger silence. The candle flames are the only things moving. They pulse gently, in no particular rhythm, like the slow and steady breathing of a place that has no need to hurry. Far ahead, the path rounds another gentle curve, and the candlelight follows it, disappearing into a warmth that glows faintly around the bend. You move toward it steadily, without urgency. The temple facades on either side grow softer in your peripheral vision. The carved columns blur pleasantly at their edges. The warm amber light pools at your feet and rises just enough to touch the carved sandstone at eye level, where ancient hands once pressed their palms to feel the work take shape beneath them. This is where you settle gently into the pace of the place itself. The path continues forward, always forward, through the candlelit heart of the ancient city. Each step carries you a little further into the quiet. Each facade that passes offers something steady and still into your chest, a calm that asks nothing, expects nothing, and gives everything it has to give. The candles burn on, the stone holds its form. The stars above the canyon are beginning to appear, one by one, in the softening dark of the sky. You carry the warmth of all those small flames with you now, settled gently inside your chest, as quiet and steady as the canyon itself. The light above the canyon rim is changing now. What was amber only moments ago has softened into something far more tender, a deep rose bleeding upward through shades of lilac, and then into that particular violet that only desert skies can hold. You are resting here, still and unhurried, and the great curved walls of sandstone around you have taken on a color you cannot quite name. They glow almost from within, as though the hours of gathered warmth are releasing themselves slowly back into the cooling air. The canyon walls rise sheer and smooth in some places, rippled and striated in others, where ancient water once carved channels through the rock. Those channels catch the fading light and hold it in thin horizontal lines, pale gold against the deepening red. The rock has recorded every rain that ever fell here, every slow, patient century, and now it rests in the growing dusk, perfectly still, completely at ease. There is no wind tonight. Or if there is, it is so gentle that it moves only the very finest dust along the ground, a soft drift that settles and rises, and settles again without urgency. You can feel the air shift from warm to cool with great deliberateness, the way the desert always surrenders its heat once the sun has gone, openly and all at once, releasing the day like a long, slow exhale. Above you, the violet is deepening further. It is moving toward indigo now, and at the very top of the sky, directly overhead, the first pale stars are beginning to appear. They come one at a time. You notice one, and then another, and then a third, slightly to the left of the second, and each one simply rests there, quiet and certain, as if it has always been waiting in that exact position for the light to thin enough to show it. The carved facades far along the avenue have gone from rose to shadow. Their columns and cornices are silhouettes now, clean dark shapes pressed against the glowing sky, and they carry a grandeur in their stillness that feels wholly different from how they appeared in daylight. In daylight, you could count the steps, trace the carvings, read the architecture. Now, you can only feel the weight of it, the ancient, patient presence of all that shaped rock standing quietly in the settling dark. Somewhere beyond the far rim, a small fire has been lit. You cannot see the flame itself, only a faint orange warmth reflected on the pale ground nearby, and the suggestion of someone sitting close to it, tending it without haste. The Nabateans knew this hour well. They knew how the canyon held the day's warmth into the first part of the night, how the rock itself became a shelter around the city, how the stars here were different from the stars above the open plain, framed and intimate, close enough to feel personal. The sky is almost fully indigo now. The violet has not disappeared so much as traveled, moved upward and transformed, become something richer and denser as it reached the zenith. And spreading from that zenith outward toward each rim of the canyon are stars. Not a handful now, but many, layered and soft, clusters of light that have no hard edges, but simply glow and blur gently into one another like scattered flour on dark cloth. The air carries the coolness of high stone and open sky. It has a faint mineral quality, clean and dry and slightly sweet, as desert air always becomes at night, when warmth has drawn something aromatic from the rock and left it drifting just above the ground. You breathe it in without effort. It comes to you easily, carrying with it the sense of great age, of a place that has existed long before you arrived and will rest here long after you have gone, unchanged and unhurried. The ancient water channels carved along the walls of the sick, those small, precise grooves cut by Nabatean hands to carry spring water into the city, are dry now as they have been for centuries. But in the starlight, they trace silver lines down the rock face, faint and delicate as veins. They remind you that this city was once utterly alive with the sound of running water, with the commerce of spices and silk, with the voices of people who found beauty in this red valley and decided to stay. You have no sense of needing to move. The canyon holds the night in a quiet embrace, its walls close enough to feel sheltering, far enough apart above to offer the whole spread of the sky. A shooting star draws a single soft line from one rim to the other and is gone before you have quite formed a thought about it. The columns of the royal tombs catch starlight on their flat faces, a faint silvering that gives them dimension even in the dark. They have been here so long that they seem less like buildings and more like features of the landscape itself, as natural as the ridges around them, as patient as the plateau above. Their makers are long rested. Their cargoes of incense and myrrh-traveled roads that no longer exist to cities that have changed beyond recognition. But these facades remain still and accepting, witnesses to every night that has passed in this valley, this one included. The temperature is gentle now, not cold, not warm, simply even and still and comfortable, as deep nights in sheltered places tend to be. The stars have arranged themselves across the canyon, opening in their ancient patterns, and you can see the slow wheel of them if you remain quiet enough to notice. They drift so gradually that movement only becomes apparent when you stop expecting it, when you simply rest your gaze somewhere soft and let time become very large and very kind. The rose-red city has gone to shadow and silver and deep quiet. Its walls breathe with stored warmth. Its carved doorways open onto darkness. Its wide thoroughfare, where merchants and pilgrims and camel trains once moved through the valley hours, is empty and still and perfectly at peace. And you are here in all of it, unhurried and undemanding, resting in the same ancient quiet that has gathered in this canyon every night for 2,000 years, held gently by the rock, held gently by the dark. The night has deepened now, and Petra breathes around you in the slowest, most ancient rhythm you have ever felt. The sandstone walls have given back the last of the day's warmth, releasing it upward into the open sky. And what remains is something cooler, something hushed, something that settles against your skin like the memory of rest. You are resting somewhere near the heart of this carved valley, though the word heart feels almost too alive for what surrounds you now. Everything here has grown very quiet. The great facades have folded themselves into the dark, and what you feel is simply their presence, enormous and unhurried and entirely still, leaning gently into the night the way old things lean, without effort, without needing anything from the world. The stone here is not cold. It is merely still. There is a difference, and you can feel it if you let your hand rest against the wall. It carries the memory of warmth without the heat itself. It holds the shape of centuries the way a riverbed holds the shape of water long after the river has moved on. Something about that understanding is deeply restful. You breathe, and the stone seems to breathe with you slowly, without effort, without asking anything of you in return. Stars have appeared above the open canyon, and they are not the stars of your ordinary nights. They are older here, or they seem so, because the darkness beneath them is so complete. No amber glow from distant towns, no reflected shimmer from roads or rivers. Only the pale rose-tinted walls rising all around you, and above them, arching from rim to rim, the long, slow river of the Milky Way, tilting westward as the hours pass in their unhurried way. You feel the gravity of the earth differently in a place like this. It is not heaviness. It is more like belonging, like being recognized, like being quietly accepted into the long patience of the rock. The canyon floor beneath you is the same stone the Nabatean caravan drivers walked upon, and it absorbs your breath, now just as quietly, just as patiently as it absorbed everything else that passed through this valley. There is a stillness here that does not demand anything of you. It simply holds you in place, the way the walls hold the night sky. Your breathing has already slowed. You may not have noticed, but it has. Each breath arrives a little later than the last, a little softer, a little less eager to depart. The air carries the faint mineral coolness of deep rock, and something else beneath it, something dry and faintly sweet, the ghost of the resin and incense trade that once moved through these carved corridors. It is barely there, barely more than a warmth at the very back of your throat. And then even that softens and dissolves, and there is only the cool, clean quiet of the desert night. The carved chambers nearby are dark inside now. During the day, they held cool shadow and the smell of ancient dust. Now they hold something gentler still, a darkness that is not empty but full of the quiet accumulation of nights exactly like this one. You do not need to see them. You only need to know they are there, their doorways open to the same stars, their stone floors smooth and cool and still, waiting for nothing at all. Somewhere very far above you, a small wind moves along the canyon rim. It does not descend. It only passes across the highest ridge of rock, threading between boulders, lifting fine grains of dust into the dark. And then it is gone, and the stillness that follows is deeper for having been briefly interrupted. This is how quiet works in the oldest places. Each small disturbance only reveals the silence waiting underneath, patient and deep and wide as the desert itself. The Milky Way shifts almost imperceptibly, constellations that ancient caravan drivers once used to find their way across the Hedges, and the Sinai are still moving in their slow arcs, tilting toward their destinations as they have done every clear night before this one, and will do every clear night after. The stars do not know about the passage of empires, or the slow silting of water channels, or the centuries of quiet. They only know their arcs, and watching them, even with closed eyes, you feel something of that same certainty, that same unhurried trust in the way things move. Your body has settled now. Your shoulders have released whatever they were holding. Your hands have grown heavy in your lap or at your sides, warm and still. Your jaw has unclenched without your asking it to. Your whole body has grown heavy in the gentle, trustworthy way of deep rest, and you feel yourself sinking, not downward exactly, but inward into the soft center of sleep. The stone around you does not require your attention. It has been here long before you arrived, and it will remain long after this night passes. All it asks of you now is to stop and to rest and to trust the night as the stone has always trusted it. Your thoughts, if you still have them, have the texture of water in a very shallow pool, barely moving, barely catching light. They do not pull at you. They drift to the edges and dissolve into the warm dark. And what remains is simply the steady presence of the earth beneath you, the cool breath of the canyon walls, and the slow, unhurried turning of the stars. The old valley rests. Every carved surface, every smoothed threshold, every corbel and column and open doorway rests. The trade routes that once led here have long since stilled. The cedar oil and silk and spice carried across the desert sands, all of it has arrived at its final, quiet destination. And that destination is this precise, unhurried stillness, held in the hollow of the canyon like water held in cupped hands. You rest with it. You are not separate from this stillness. You are woven into it now, as gently and naturally as moonlight is woven into pale stone. Your breath moves in and out without your asking it to. Your heartbeat keeps its slow and faithful time. The stone breathes alongside you, its ancient surface releasing the very last trace of warmth into the open sky. There is nothing left to find. No path to walk, no doorway to pass through. You have already arrived. You are already here in the softest and most settled hour of the night, held by warm walls and the slow turning of stars. You let go of the last small thing you were holding. The canyon holds you gently. The stone is warm. The stars drift on, and you sleep